Hello, everybody, and welcome to our daily roundup, the Rebel News daily live stream. I am your co-host, Mary Ugolini, and I'm joined with our BC correspondent, Drea Humphrey. And if you don't know, today is Tuesday, August 29th. It's hard to keep track these days. But before we get into our housekeeping and some of the news items, how are you doing, Drea?
Good. I'm glad it's not just me who's finding it hard to keep track of the days. My goodness. I think there's so much news out there that you're always on the hamster wheel chasing it. But I'm doing good and glad to be on the show.
Yeah, likewise. And it's always fun to when the two of us get together. I always enjoy the topics we can discuss
Yeah.
and just the conversation that we have. So I'm excited to get into some things with you. Now, if you're joining us on certain platforms, YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and Getter, we have been demonetized from YouTube specifically. So a fun way that you can get involved and support our work is if you head on over to Rumble, and there you can give us what's called a Rumble rant, and it's a way to chip in a couple dollars, make a small monetary donation to help keep our independent journalism afloat, keep our lights on, and our ability to bring you this kind of live stream. Keep that intact, and then we'll share your comment on screen. So whether it be relevant to the topic that we're discussing, if you have an opinion or something to add, or maybe a point that we're missing, or if you have a tip to share with us, or just a general comment supporting our work, or maybe otherwise, we'd love to hear from you. So I would urge everybody who's on YouTube, we do have a mass following there. I think there's like 1.6
Yeah,
million
sounds about right.
subscribers last time I checked. Could have gone up or maybe even down, depending on YouTube's algorithm work these days. But we don't want to kind of abandon our YouTube subscribers. So we're just trying to urge everybody to go over to Rumble, where we're not so heavily censored. There's not these ambiguous and arbitrary community standards. I mean, a lot of my reporting when I'm critiquing or criticizing the medical establishment, and that is namely the pharma oligarchs, like Pfizer, Moderna, and the way that the governments have really kowtowed to their recommendations and the push for this sort of like pharma medical industrial complex. We can't say any of that on YouTube. So that's really unfortunate, but we do want to capture all those subscribers that we've built up over the years, and we don't want to leave you behind. But that's my kind of rant about YouTube and why you should head over to Rumble and find us there. They've really stepped things up in the last several months. I think that there's a good competition there now between YouTube and Rumble.
For sure.
Um,
Yeah. It's like you said, we don't want to abandon our YouTube subscribers, but they sure as heck can abandon YouTube and join us at Rumble.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
might as well
Before we
support
get
Rumble as well.
Well, yeah, that's just it. Show those in charge that, hey, there's a need for this platform. There's a public interest, there's a public want, a desire, a need, and really hold their feet to the fire and show YouTube that what they're doing is wrong, and that people are intelligent enough that they can garner information and decipher and discern for themselves. It doesn't all need to be labeled as this scary misinformation, and silenced and squashed. So yeah, I think that's important to put your money where your mouth is. And by doing that, by showing us support on Rumble, that's exactly what you're doing. So before we get into some of the news items, I want to quickly just touch on our campaign we have at fixourcities.com. David Menzies recently traveled last week to a South Riverdale community health center, which was the scene of a really horrific crime about a month ago. A woman, an innocent bystander, a mother of two, was walking by this safe injection site that's housed at the South Riverdale Community Center. And gunshots broke out. There was some sort of, I think, gang, definitely drug-related gun violence unfolded, and she was hit with one of the stray bullets, and she died. And so this has really shone a light on the issue of not only these so-called safe injection sites, but the crime and the violence that seems to follow in their midst. So David had a billboard truck. We bought a billboard truck, and we drove it out to circle around the South Riverdale Community Center, where it was essentially calling the CEO, Jason Altenberg, the CEO of the South Riverdale Community Center, to resign amid the arrest of one of the workers of this healthcare center. I'm just looking for her name here in the report. It's 23-year-old Khalila Zara Mohammed. So she, as of, I believe it's 2 weeks ago now, she was charged by the Toronto Police Services. This is the South Riverdale Community Centers in Toronto, if I didn't mention that already. And she has been charged with accessory after the fact and obstruction of justice concerning this particular shooting and this violent unfolding at the South Riverdale Community Center. And she was actually featured. David mentions it in the written component of his report on this. And I don't know if we can pull the report itself up on screen or maybe show some visuals of the billboard truck. But she was featured in a glowing CBC News report last year in which she advocated for more drug consumption sites in order to reduce the stigma, right? It's all about reducing that stigma.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you see kind of the writing on the wall and you're concerned, you know, the town that I'm originally from, I live just on the outskirts now, but in Cobourg, there's David Menzies with the billboard truck in the background. And I guess there was some sort of, they were trying to trespass him from the public sidewalk. And yeah, there's the woman, Khalila Mohammed, that was arrested in relation to the shooting. Again, charged for accessory. You know, these are unproven charges at this point, innocent until proven guilty. I think we're still upholding that rule of law.
It depends. It depends what it is.
Yeah. So she has now been charged with, as I said, accessory and the other charge there that, where's the report? I want to make sure I get the wording right on that, and obstruction of justice. That's right. But, you know, these little safe injection sites, if they're not popping up as like a controlled, formalized thing, they're popping up as unsanctioned overdose prevention sites. The little town that I'm originally from, Cobourg, it has been the site of one of these unsanctioned overdose prevention sites. And there's been now a homeless campment has ensued. And there was also a shooting there 3 weeks ago, which is generally unheard of in this small, you know, it used to be like a sleepy town, coined Ontario's feel-good town. I'm not sure that it's feeling so good anymore. So anyway, if you want to support our work on exposing this criminality that's infiltrating our cities, this out of control crime, open air drug use, then you can do that at fixourcities.com. There's a petition there. And of course, to help cover the expenses of, for instance, that billboard truck to go and circle around the South Riverdale Community Center, because I think it's so important, as you see the mainstream media either ignoring this completely or spinning it in another way that this is somehow like we should have compassionate care. And that's not to say that we shouldn't, but we also need to be very realistic here that crime and violence is unacceptable. And offering, you know, harm reduction to drug addicts without instilling those first pillars of drug abuse first, like prevention. I think that this needs to be discussed more broadly because it will come to a city near you, as we've seen, even in my city, that you're not immune to this unfolding. And I mean, Drea in British Columbia, I mean, they've been at this harm reduction strategy for almost 30 years now, and it's only getting worse. Nothing's gotten any better.
Yeah, you're right. It's only getting worse. And even as we've totally upped that game, if you will, in the last 6 months or so, our overdoses are still higher than before. So it certainly isn't the answer. And like you said, there's more pillars. It's a multi-pronged approach. But just back to the truck for another point there, you're right. Most people are getting this message from, you know, state choice media, reduce the stigma. This is all good. You know, this is the way to go. And so that's why something like the billboard truck is so important, because it's just that reminder that, like, hey, there's another side of the story for the people in the area that really have the power. If something like this is in your community, it is those people who need to speak up. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've come close to covering the cost of putting that truck out. So what I love about being a journalist for Rebel News is when there are some really big injustices happening, we do act and of course, we can't do any of that without your help. So if you have it in you to throw a few bucks, a coffee's worth or whatever towards recouping the cost to do that and have that message out for the people and sort of counteract the sweeping narrative about these places and the crime that's attached to them, that would be great.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Drea, for driving that home. I mean, it just, and I know this isn't part of the topics we were originally going to discuss, and we're going to get to those, but it reminds me of that campaign. I think it was the late 80s, maybe even into the early 90s, where it was like this scrambled egg in a frying pan, and it was a prevention commercial and tactic, right? It was a whole campaign, your brain on drugs. I
remember.
And I posted a little video. If we can just like show that, I don't know, it's a 30-second clip. I think it was some sort of a commercial. But I clearly remember that as a child, like, this is your brain on drugs. Don't use drugs. And we seem to have just completely disregarded this idea of prevention for upholding this one lone concept of harm reduction. And again, as it's unfolded in BC, it doesn't seem to have reduced very much harm. So obviously it's not working, and we should maybe go back to this scrambled egg mantra of this is your brain on drugs. I know.
Okay, last time. This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
I love it. It's so simple, right? Just drive it home. And, you know, even if that keeps some kids away from drugs for 1 to 2 years, you don't know what effect that could have on their life, right? So you're right. We absolutely need to get back to the basics, crack an egg. I don't know. Did that stop kids from liking eggs too, though?
Well, it's a really good metaphor. I mean, your brain will literally be scrambled on drugs. So stay away from them, keep your brain intact. You want to be able to think coherently, act appropriately, and you can't do that when you're using illicit drugs. That's why they're illicit for a reason. Not to mention the fact that they're extremely addictive. And I mean, you can see the demise, right? That's why we've launched the campaign at Fix Our Cities. You can see the demise of places where these harm reduction strategies have been a failed effort for over the course of decades. And you can see the violence and the crime that ensues. I actually wrote a piece on Fix Our Cities. That's kind of a nice host page is what I'll call it, where you can find all of our reports as well that tie into that particular topic at fixourcities.com. And it's down a little bit. Oh, maybe it's not on the main page anymore. But anyway, here it is. Safe consumption sites aren't safe after all. And it was in relation to that South Riverdale Community Center and the employee now being charged as part of that crime, the murder. And it makes me wonder, not only, that happened, but how much now of these harm reduction workers will be liable one day if harm does happen, whether that be violence, overdose, death, whatever. Is this going to set a very strong precedent now where harm reduction employees who advocate for this can be held liable? And so the whole article is really just about tying in the uptick in crime and violence in that neighborhood since the launch of this South Riverdale Community Center. I think if I recall correctly, it was 2016 that it came out, or that it was established rather. Anyway, so I would just urge people to have a look at that. And there's lots of links in there if you want to research further. But anyway, that's our little rant on Fix Our Cities, because it will be coming to a city or a town near you unless we get loud and stand against what is happening here with this idea of harm reduction and compassionate care, because we can be compassionate, but we have to recognize what the real issue is here. And I think by not working on those other pillars of reduction of drug abuse, we're really missing the bar. All right. So our first topic here is,
trigger warning. Trigger warning. Trudeau's face may be shown.
We have a CTV News article here where Trudeau is seeking the advice of youth on pressing concerns to inform future policy. I mean, really, the headline is just quite telling there. But the opening paragraph says the Prime Minister is meeting with his Youth Advisory Board this week to hear its most pressing concerns with the aim of informing future policy decisions. It is the first in-person meeting of this cohort of the Prime Minister's Youth Council. Its new members have been in place since February of this year. And I guess this apparently plays a crucial role as a fundamental platform for the Prime Minister, members of Parliament, and senior government officials to consult and gather insights, as well as for youth to share their perspectives, priorities, and ideas, reads a government press release about the meeting. I think that Trudeau needs to cater to the youth, because everybody who actually knows a thing or two about sustaining their life and their livelihood and the economy is part of the heckling group that we see follow him all throughout the country, coast to coast to coast. Like,
Exactly.
it's really sad.
I mean, there is something to be said with looking to the youth. I mean, they are the way of the future. So I get that. I tried to look up like who exactly is the Youth Council. Like I wanted to see some faces, names, why they were chosen. I just did that this morning, and I couldn't come across it quickly in the little bit of time that I had for it. But it would be interesting. It says it's not a nonpartisan. Oh, you found the look. Of course you did, Tamara. It's supposed to be a nonpartisan group. Can we show those pictures or anything like that? But I would like to dig more in on who is in that
Here they
group.
are. So if you just click open the cohort 6, so that's
okay, in the cohort. Yeah. Let's see. There we are. There they are. Okay. So yeah. Oh, you got someone from Alberta, student at Dartmouth. So yeah, it's very interesting that I actually hadn't even heard of the council before, but apparently it plays a big role. And so I want to know, are these people in fact nonpartisan? What do you think?
Right. Well, I think that because they're clearly youth, right? So these are under 20. Right. And so they've been heavily indoctrinated over the last several years of their lives by the education system. And so I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who is impartial on the political spectrum coming out of that kind of system at this point. It looks like all of the current members are college or university students. So it doesn't look like he's soliciting, or the government rather is soliciting a broad spectrum of youth. These are very much youth that have gone through a certain set of systems, are in university and or college. I hate to use the word privileged, but I mean, these are, obviously privileged upper middle class children. And maybe the best people to talk about future policy too would be a more broad array of demographic and not just strictly university students or students at all. I mean, gosh, I remember when I was 18, going into, I think, my third year of university. I didn't have a clue. You don't really have a clue until you become a homeowner, start having kids, start having responsibility, having to keep a roof over your head, having to feed people and have lives depend on you. This, I don't know that these people really have much of a clue.
Well, that's the thing. How much weight should they have? And what would Trudeau have said when he was youth? Has he changed a lot? I came across a video, actually, somebody posted on Twitter in response to this. I think I shared it in the link. It's really quick, but it's just funny to see how his views have changed.
Is there anything you've learned from the experiences that both your parents have gone through?
Nothing I should talk about on camera, I think.
The politician already? No. Never.
I'm going to be a teacher.
Oh, gosh.
Never will he be a politician. But he's still good at not answering questions, even that far back. But yeah, it kind of just points out how much weight should you put on youth. He said he would never, ever be a politician. And here we are re-electing him over and over and over. Hopefully not over again.
Yeah, an actual small fringe minority elected him, and they also elected the NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. And now the two have formed this unofficial coalition, so they can basically just ram through whatever it is they see fit for our once free and democratic nation, and not listen to anything that the opposition has to say. Who is only increasing? The opposition is polling is increasing in the polling repeatedly, week by week, outpacing the Liberals. And I think that it speaks volumes as to why well, let's show you this clip here of Trudeau thinking, I guess he wakes up every day thinking about how he can make life more affordable for Canadians and as a trust fund baby in his ivory tower. And this will speak volumes as to why I think he's lagging in the polls.
The disasters we're facing as a world are not just bad luck. Of that, there is no question. They are being driven by climate change and nature loss. The question is, therefore, what are we to do about it?
Tax.
Some, including some politicians, have tried to sell us on ignoring the environmental crisis, whether that's climate change, biodiversity loss, or pollution. Or they say that we have to choose between making people's lives more affordable on the one hand or protecting our planet on the other. Well, that's just plain wrong. I wake up every day and think about how I can help make life more affordable for Canadian families. That's what our grocery rebate, or our work to build housing, or our $10 a day childcare is all about. And I also wake up every day and think about how to keep people safe from things like wildfires, and how to protect the world that our kids and grandkids will inherit. These goals don't contradict each other. In fact, working on one must help us achieve the other. And I'm not just talking about how our pollution pricing cuts emissions while putting money back in people's pockets, although of course it does.
What?
There's so much wrong. At first I was like, yeah, you're on the right track for once. He's like, all of these things happening at once are not a coincidence. And then he's like, it's climate change. But it's funny, if anybody else says something isn't a coincidence and they have a theory, they're automatically conspiracy theorists with him as well, right? But how is the climate tax going to put more money in our pocket? He knows that everybody's concerned about it. It's so infuriating. And then he goes to wildfire and says that it's going to fix the wildfires. Well, how about you just stick to the promise that you made on the campaign trail in 2021? The Trudeau Liberals promised to spend $500 million to get Canada, firefighters across the country, everything they needed for the next fire seasons. When we look at Northwest Territories and BC, that didn't happen. I have another report coming up to show that where the money has gone, and he hasn't even put out half of that money towards it. And so it's like, yeah, we'll use the taxes to make up for our broken promises, if we're even lucky enough to have that happen.
I think at this point, the Liberals just mostly campaign on broken promises. You can pretty much use that as a fail-safe. That whatever they say is either going to be the exact opposite or just a complete failure. I mean, Canadians don't want $10 a day childcare. They don't want a grocery rebate. They want to just have the money to be able to afford groceries and childcare if they need it, or they want to be able to afford for one of the parents to stay home with their children. Forcing both parents into the workplace, making life so unaffordable that even if both parents work full-time, robust schedules, they still can't make ends meet. This isn't the sign of a good government. That's not the sign of a strong, healthy economy. Having a grocery rebate for people because they literally can't afford to feed their children fruits and vegetables, that is a sign that your government has failed. It's not a good thing to be pushing out these kind of rebates and these credits while you continue to increase your carbon tax, which, I don't know, have we ever been shown how many degrees of cooling the carbon tax is going to make the earth by even the next 3 years from now? It's all absolutely absurd and ridiculous. And, you know, as the floodgates continue to be open for our immigration strategy under the Justin Trudeau Liberals, we now see in the mainstream media that migrants, in particular, this report features Syrian migrants. They're complaining that Canada isn't living up to what they were promised when they were told to come here. Like, have a look at this clip.
In here. Mohammed Al-Shawa brings us into his hotel room. Stacks of clothes in the corner and their own blankets on the beds. This is the room where he, his wife, and 3 children have been living for a month.
They came here like for to be like a Canadian, to be like good future, but it's not. They treat them like an animal.
Al-Shoa is from Syria but arrived from Lebanon. Speaking with a translator, he says he's asked for a second room but was told it's not possible. So the way out is to find an affordable home, which he says is a challenge.
He need 3 bedrooms. So they give him $3,000. Okay, tell him, okay, you have to find a home as soon as he can for 3 months. After that, they're gonna kick him out.
Mohammed Ridi, a civil engineer from Syria, has similar financial concerns for his young family.
Give him like $1,779, like a salary every month. The money they give to them is not enough, especially when he looking out for an apartment or a house.
His wife also had a miscarriage shortly after they arrived and needed urgent surgery. But Reedy says they weren't given translation services.
They need someone to help him, like special translator, like for a hospital, for emergency.
CTV News reached out to Costi, the organization assisting refugees here. A spokesperson told us Costi ensures that interpretation services are provided whenever they are requested by our clients. Refugees across the city have been facing challenges. Last month, dozens, mainly from African countries, were left sleeping on Peter Street until local churches opened their doors to give them temporary shelter. All levels of government have been at a funding stalemate. Last month, the federal government promised nearly $100 million for the city of Toronto.
The federal government will be there, but when it comes to settling asylum seekers, again, municipalities and provinces have the large part of responsibility on that.
Al-Shoa says if he'd known this is how his family would be living, he never would have come.
If right now they told him, okay, you have to go back, you say, okay, I will, because here's nothing to help her.
Alison Hurst, CTV News.
Yeah,
I just have one question. Did you catch whether he said that they're receiving a salary of $1,779 or they're wanting that?
That's what they're receiving, from what I gathered.
And it's not enough. Oh my God.
No, but at the same point in time, welcome to Canada, where everyday Canadians are struggling with the exact same thing and are not getting, a $3,000, here's your first and last, go find a suitable place, which is pretty much impossible where I am in Ontario, well, across Ontario, probably in general, unless you're going up extremely far north. This is obviously a result of a not well thought out failed government policy of, like I said, opening the floodgates to mass migration and refugees. If you don't have the capacity and you don't have the framework in place to properly assist people, then why are you offering assistance in the first place? It's obviously an inept failure by the federal government. But it also ricochets down into the other levels of government, from the provincial down to the municipal. And it really reminds me of that time. Like, it was really funny to see Trudeau respond that way, because remember when he responded to a veteran asking why the government doesn't help them with their medical bills and their housing and all of the issues that came as a result of them literally serving and defending our country. And Trudeau said, oh, you're asking for more than we're willing to give, or more than we're prepared to give, whatever his exact wording was. And yet here you have refugees that aren't even Canadians, that didn't serve our country to defend and protect it. And he is saying, oh, the federal government will be there, will be there. This is so backwards. It is, I don't even have any words really to say how backwards that is, from a veteran to a refugee. I'm all about helping people. But you need to be, you fill your cup first, right? It's, you can't help, you can't help anybody from an empty cup. And that's what we're trying to do here. And it's obviously just failing both the refugees and everyday Canadians who are similarly in a place of struggle.
Well, I'm glad you made that comparison, because it just shows how messed up this whole situation. And I think the goal is, am I right? Is it like 100,000 more or something like that? They're saying that because we're going to have like a slow and birth, that this is the answer to it. Meanwhile, they have posters up in Vancouver saying only have one child. But even that person, it's like we're catfishing these people. They think they're coming to some glorious place of financial freedom and prosperity. And you're right, we're suffering. A lot of people don't have that money. I remember as a child living in some pretty tight situations. Sometimes we had to live with other people because we didn't have somewhere to stay, but we didn't expect the government to come to our rescue and give us a salary. But they're literally saying, if I had known this, I wouldn't have come, which begs the other question, how bad is it where you're coming from? And I know we've done reports, I'm forgetting the URL, migrantreports.com maybe, something like that, where we're showing that a lot of these asylum seekers are coming here in different ways. They're coming here on visas and never leaving. And as soon as they come here on sort of a visitor's visa or whatever, they're already put up into hotels. Even in British Columbia out here in the Abbotsford area, and I believe the Richmond area, you know, they're put in suites and hotels and they get everything that they would need at the moment. And of course, it's stressful for them because it's like, yeah, welcome to the life of Canadians. 30-year-olds are still living with their parents. There's no way they can afford rent, let alone a household. Families are renting places together. Out in Vancouver, it's very popular to be charged, $700 to share one room in a house, or more than 700. Sometimes it's a bunk bed. So this is ridiculous, and it absolutely reflects on the Trudeau government, and it needs to stop. We need to do something drastic because this can't keep piling on. I mean, we really need to rein it in.
It really is piling up, and no end in sight. And that's the really concerning, major concern of this. I'm just going to read 2 really quick super chats, and we'll go to a quick ad break and come back to some trigger warning again, Chrystia Freeland videos. Fraser McBurney, thank you, Fraser, for your support. It says Biden is not in charge of the executive branch of government, but who is? Obama is. That is why they want to jail Trump. The DMs, the Democrats know that they will be in jail. Yeah, those are some pretty serious allegations, and I guess we'll see in real time as it continues to unfold. Yeah. Sharon Donner, 78, says, you want to make sure they are not part of the youth being groomed by WEF. It exists. So this is in regards to that youth council that we were discussing a few minutes ago. I happen to know a person who was/is part of that training. That's a good point. Yeah, because Justin Trudeau and a lot of his cabinet ministers were part of the Young Global Leaders, which is, World Economic Forum, that's WEF, initiative. And quite literally, Klaus Schwab, the leader of the head honcho of the WEF, the World Economic Forum, said that's what they do. They train these young global leaders and then they infiltrate the cabinets. And so I guess the WEF is some sort of conspiracy theory still, if you are watching and listening to what the mainstream media would say. But he literally said that. Maybe we'll show that quick clip, if we can pull that up, of Klaus Schwab saying, we infiltrate the cabinets, and then we can go to an ad break and come back with some Chrystia Freeland videos.
Yeah, and if you can't find it fast, I just want to say Chrystia Freeland, who we're about to talk to, is on the board. She's on one of the board members of the WEF.
Young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina, and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more, half of this cabinet are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
It's so embarrassing, honestly.
And that's supposed to be a conspiracy theory, as per the mainstream media would have you believe. Nope, that's actually what's happening, and they say it themselves. You just need to actually do some journalism and find out. Anyway, let's go to a quick ad break, and then we'll come back with some Chrystia Freeland videos.
We're facing an imminent threat. A planned blackout of all news content in Canada is coming to Facebook and Instagram, threatening to silence rebel news and those who depend on us for the other side of the story. The cause? Well, Justin Trudeau's new censorship law, Bill C-18, which demands social media companies pay news outlets for the news stories their users share on the platform. It's a shakedown and a desperate attempt to keep the mainstream media afloat. It seems the billions in taxpayer subsidies just aren't enough to keep the country's propagandists in business. But Meta, Facebook's parent company, has chosen to block Canadian news content rather than comply, Rebel News included. Many have already lost their ability to access our Facebook and Instagram pages. The blackout will soon affect every user in Canada. But fear not, we have had a plan to protect your access to our news content. We've partnered with Private Internet Access, PIA, a VPN provider dedicated to safeguarding digital privacy. For just $2 a month, you can maintain your access to our content across all your devices. And unlike other VPN providers, PIA does not store any user data as it's automatically deleted from their servers to avoid leaks and government subpoenas for information. Their servers are located in all 50 states, not the ones in communist China. You can visit piavpn.com/rebelnews and enjoy an exclusive 83% discount and 4 months free. Use it to bypass regional restrictions and stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world. And stick it to Trudeau's new censorship law. Safeguard freedom of speech and join us to combat Trudeau's censorship today at piavpn.com/rebelnews.
All right. So this next clip we have is the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, laughably, Freeland. She's asked here from the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, Andrew Furey, how they're going to reduce the cost of living by increasing the carbon tax. So here is how she responds.
Like you said, Premier Andrew Furey has written a letter again to the Prime Minister asking for a pause on clean fuel regulations. In your opinion, is there a chance that that pause could happen?
Look, I take the concerns of the Premier, of Ken's constituents, because Ken talked to me about them. I take those concerns very seriously. The cost of living is a real challenge here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And, gas is a part of that. Heating oil is a part of that. I think it's important to recognize that the climate action incentive payments, they're going to make a difference. That's $1,300 for a family of 4. I don't want to overstate it. It won't solve everything, but it will make a real difference. And I do also think we all need to recognize, and look, people here recognize it maybe more than pretty much anybody else in the country, that the climate transition is an opportunity for our country, that it is something that if we embrace, and we are, that is a tremendous source of jobs and growth for today and for the future.
I don't know who's embracing it. I think everybody's being pretty much forced to embrace it. And it's only the young global leaders from the World Economic Forum, like Justin Trudeau's cabinet, who are, who think that this is a good idea and somehow going to generate economic growth. We have the infrastructure, everything exists to have reliable, efficient, consistent energy production. And it's this government that stands in the way of that. And by imposing, we're not embracing that it's being imposed on us, this green transition. It's bankrupting people. I mean, just even removing the carbon tax would make such a big difference in the pocketbooks of struggling Canadians. I see it. You see the price of gas. I see it on my energy bills. I see it reflected in the price of food. This is obviously another failed Liberal policy, right? We just touched on the failed immigration refugee policy. These aren't well thought out things that the government is doing, and it's not them that's bearing the burden of the fallout. It's everyday Canadians and the people who were sold on this false notion of coming to Canada for wealth and growth, because that is not what is happening in Canada right now.
No, yeah, I wish I could find the video. Oh, I found it. And we probably wouldn't be able to play it all or anything like that. But basically, just to recap, it's this woman, she's actually asking Trudeau, and she's a disabled grandmother who went back to school and worked very hard on, being able to buy her own home. And she said, her...
Oh, yeah, we played that one a
Oh,
couple
did
weeks
you?
ago.
Okay, so no need to play it, but she basically said that her hydro bill or whatever is more than her mortgage at this point. And how can this be happening? This is a disabled grandmother, goes back to school, works hard, buys her own home, and she can't even afford, her bills like that. So, and what is with this word transition? Oh, did you have something to add to that?
Well, that's from 2017. And so if people were struggling in 2017, can you fast track now? That's before the carbon tax. That's before the cost of living. That's before the housing crisis.
Know it was that old.
So that was happening,
find her.
You know what? I think that she's actually, I'm just seeing here in your link, Drea, she's from Peterborough. I wonder, I don't know. They don't say her name or anything, but Peterborough is not far from where I am. So if this grandmother happens to be watching, contact us. Let us know how you're doing now amid the housing crisis and the cost of living crisis and the inflationary crisis that we're facing in Canada, because a lot has changed since 2017. And in my opinion, it's only gotten way worse.
It has gotten way worse. And I just wanted to talk about that word transition, like Chrystia Freeland, they keep saying the climate transition, and you're right. This isn't something we're choosing. It's a hostile takeover. It's like, you do this, soon we'll find out exactly what the or else will be. But it reminds me a lot of sort of, the language that they used around COVID, instead of saying, we're going to make you separate from your loved ones, they called it like a bubble. Everybody loves bubbles.
Yes.
Kids love bubbles and things like that. Or we're just going to flatten the curve. I mean, you're going to be stuck in isolation, which is a form of torture and things like that. So this whole transition, like, it's just a smooth transition. No, it's a hostile takeover. It's going to be rough. It's going to have a lot of consequences, and it already is starting to.
We can see it. You can feel it. It's hitting at you where it hurts in your pocketbooks. And speaking of transition, we have another quick clip of Chrystia Freeland saying that talking about the government's travel advisory for LGBTQ travelers. Let's let the clip speak for itself.
Why has your government issued the travel advisory for LGBTQ plus people to the United States? And was this something you discussed with President Biden, or your government discussed with President Biden first?
So, as someone who has had the real privilege of serving as Canada's foreign minister, I know that our travel advisories are done very professionally. We have professionals in the government whose job is to look carefully around the world and to monitor whether there are particular dangers to particular groups of Canadians. That's their job, and it's the right thing to do. When it comes to the United States specifically, I have personal experience of dealing with a diversity of U.S. administrations and of dealing with American leaders at all levels of government, in all branches of government, and with Americans who represent diverse groups across the country, whether it is business or labor or civic organizations. And that's because our government understands, as every Canadian government needs to understand, that one of the principal responsibilities of the federal government is to understand how to work with our U.S. neighbor. I think our government has shown that that's a priority for us, and that we work hard at it, and that we're able to manage that relationship regardless of the choices that the people of the United States make.
I literally lose brain cells listening to her.
Even as we work hard,
she's still going.
Even as we work hard on that government to government relationship,
This is a
Every
prime example. Yeah, we don't need to listen to the rest of this. It's a prime example of how to say a lot of things without actually saying anything at all. It's just a bunch of word salad, to speak jargon.
And it's fueling the whole trans genocide. Like, what genocide is happening? The whole, and when there's a lot of like the trans activists that say things like, we do exist. It's like, no one's saying you don't exist. Like, everybody's complaining about nothing. I feel so bad for people in the LGBTQ community that just wanted to be accepted. They just wanted to be like everybody else, you know? And then they have things like this. So it's like an advisory, and it must be hard to go through that. It reminds me a lot of like the whole Black Lives Matter time, where there was this impression that if you were Black and you went to the US, you were just going to get, like, especially a male, you were just going to get shot dead. And like some people actually believe that cops were just like going around and like randomly shooting Black men for zero reason, not for resisting arrest or pulling a weapon first, which was, I remember at the time when I was like, okay, well, how many, Black people did get shot by cops in 2019 without pulling a weapon? It was like 2 or 3, but the impression is so different. And then you have Canada behaving like this and scaring LGBTQ people
for no real reason.
Yeah, for no real reason.
What you're getting at. And I mean, oh my gosh, and I don't even know how to lead into this, because this is just, as David Menzies would put it, transanity coming from the United States. I guess we're not very surprised when you have people who don't know what a woman is there. They can't, you need to be a biologist to define a woman. But here we have a story from the New York Post where a judge has rejected sorority sisters' lawsuit blocking a trans woman from joining. Because the court will not define a woman, but it's because the sorority itself, it's a minute 18. Maybe we have enough time to play this quick video, because the sorority terms themselves don't define what a woman is. I think it's because it's like assumed, right? Everybody knows what a woman is. Like,
exactly.
This is Bizarro World 101.
Wow.
We don't need to have a clear definition. Anybody can define a woman. It is an adult female. That's the end of story. Adult female. You have a uterus. You have the organs that coincide with what a woman, with a female, with a biological female. You have the capability of becoming pregnant. You have the ability to breastfeed and give birth. Like, these are literally things that make a woman. It's not hard to define. Everybody knows what a woman is. This idea that it's not that is bizarre, upside down. And these poor women are feeling, scared and at risk with this male infiltrating their sorority where, we'll play the video.
Yeah.
All of the bathrooms are shared spaces. There are about 3, 4 if you count the guest bathroom. And they are shared spaces. There are no private changing areas for when you shower. There are no locks on the showers. And it's very open and vulnerable.
Oh my goodness. And this person's moving into the sorority house next year?
What's interesting about that, Megan, is that there has been an exemption granted for him, for his safety, but not for these young women.
Yeah, actually, it was some of that written part that explained it a little bit more. But the student, is alleged to be a sexual predator. Some of the women and girls, there he is there. They say that he became physically sexually aroused around them, making them uncomfortable. And there was one other point that the video itself made that I wanted to touch on. Sat there and stared at them without talking for hours. And then at the end, there's a photo, I think, of the sorority. Oh, where is it? Well, you can just see the differences between them in the photo of the sorority. But the sorority bylaws, that's right. The sorority bylaws don't define what a woman is. So the judge won't either. Like,
it's like saying you can't define what a cat or dog is or something like that. It's so scary. There's no safe place right now in this woke world for women. They just explained the bathroom situation, and you're right. They are claiming that they've seen this person get aroused, and it's what a time to be a pervert, what a time to be a predator, what a time to be a voyeurist. You can just do it all under this LGBTQ plus umbrella. And then you have, I would say that judge took a cop out, just found an excuse not to do proper ruling. Oh, look, we don't know what a woman is. So, I found it out. I don't have to be that judge that, does the right thing and protects these women in this situation. It's such an injustice. And unfortunately, it's no longer surprising to see articles like this or hear about these events.
Yeah, it's Judge Alan Johnson, and clearly Judge Alan Johnson is a coward. There's a photo here of him smiling in the court, and Judge Alan Johnson, come on, you know what a woman is. Everybody knows what a woman is. Keep these women and girls safe. Yeah. Let's not allow the unnecessary infiltration of biological males into safe women spaces where they feel vulnerable and where they feel that they are being put at risk. This is absolutely absurd. As you said, Drea, it's a cop-out. This is cowardice on full display. I really feel for these girls who have to go into this semester potentially being the subject or the victims of sexual predation. It's really sad.
Yeah. And then the victim will be who? Who do you think is going to be the victim in that situation?
Right. And that's the bizarro upside down world that we live in, where this biological male is the victim in all of this, just because women don't want him to be staring at them while they change and do womanly things. It's so backwards. And I mean, it's not far off. Like, it seems everybody is confused as to what a woman is, except for maybe me. And I think most children, this is a very basic biological question. If you ask any child that hasn't been indoctrinated by the radicalized and sexualized school system, they can tell you what a woman is. They can tell you what a man is. They can tell you what a mom is. They can tell you what a dad is. They can tell you about brothers and sisters. It's not, this isn't, you don't need to be a biologist to define these things. But in Ireland, the media minister says that the question, what is a woman, is not relevant in regards to an upcoming referendum on the role of women in society. Let's have a listen.
I just think it's appalling as a woman, and a woman as a female sports minister that's trying to promote women in sport. I think it's just really regrettable.
Minister, an article in the Irish Times this week by Pat Leahy outlined some fears within government that the so-called Women in the Home referendum might raise some uncomfortable questions for politicians. For example, how do you define a family, and what is a woman in the context of the gender debate? So on foot of that article, I'm just wondering, what is a woman in your view?
This is something that the government are discussing, Ben, but it's very important that we get that wording correct. So in relation to the actual wording of the referendum, I should hope that we'd come to agreement on that wording in the coming weeks. I think it's a really important referendum. It's something that I advocated for when I was chair of the Women's Caucus, that this would lead to a referendum.
But do you have a definition of what you referred earlier to being proud of being a female sport minister and how important it is to promote women in sport and so on? So I'm just wondering, do you have a personal definition of what a woman means?
I think that the question is not relevant to the referendum itself, because as in the issue that is pressing at the minute in relation to the exact wording of a referendum and having the referendum is absolutely essential for us in Ireland.
Well, I mean, it's a
Wow.
Absolutely absurd.
How is this our life? Like, how is this 2023? Why have we oh my gosh. It's almost, I don't know. I'm a little speechless.
It's so progressive.
Stand there and pretend you don't know what a woman is?
Yeah. Just because you're the most progressive ever. I had someone once tell me that one day we will no longer have she and he and her and him. We will all be they, thems.
Yeah. Well, it seems like that's the goal, doesn't it? Seems like it is, for us to whittle down and have no identities other than that of which the state approves.
That's right.
it's very like Orwellian. I know we always talk about 1984, Rebel News even revamped it, and there's some beautiful illustrations, I think by 1984.com, but that's what this is. It's, changing the wording, breaking it all down so that there isn't even that many meanings to things anymore. And that's what's happening. There's so many different pronouns, it's impossible for anybody to keep up, let alone children who they're telling there are all these different sexual orientations and things like that. So it's concerning to say the least. I can't believe, when we first started reporting on this, and I mean, I think since I've started with Rebel, I've been reporting on it, but it was like once in a while, and now it's all the time because this little small thing is such a mainstream issue. We can't even say what a woman is. Again, it comes down to cowardice. She knows exactly what a woman is. She just said she's proud to be a woman and proud to, promote that. And then all of a sudden she can't even say what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we have to work really hard not to memory hole things like what is a woman and what is a man, because these blurred lines of gender identity and sexual orientation, it's really being pushed so heavily that anyone who's not aware of the indoctrination and how propaganda works will need to work hard to keep their mind and their memory intact. And that's a really scary place to be in a society where you don't want to be memory holed over the definition of a woman. I think we should go out and scoop up some physical dictionaries so that we can keep a running tab on the definitions of words and what they mean and what they are going to be spun to mean one day. I like to use again that Orwellian word double speak and wrong thing. And that's what we're seeing coming top down from the federal government, which again, it kind of ties into this apparent conspiracy theory of the World Economic Forum. But when you have World Economic Forum trained young global leaders being making up a vast majority of a government cabinet in Canada, that's what we have is these cabinet ministers. That is where this is coming from. So it's not only government down, it's like globalist oligarch agenda down. And so I think a lot of people, more and more people are starting to see that is what is actually happening here. But this idea of pronouns and pushing it in schools and our publicly funded systems has created a lot of political divide. And we have the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, weighing in on this issue. He's saying to leave it to parents. And of course, the Toronto Star here, right? You would think logic and rationale would tell you that that's pretty simple. But the Toronto Star here had to spin it because they say that parents say they want to know. But here is what the experts say. I don't know about you, Drea, but I'm getting really tired of these purported experts that are constantly amplified by the mainstream media. And they don't tell you anything about their background. They don't tell you if they have conflicts of interest. They don't tell you if they have any sort of financial gain to make from promoting this idea or this agenda or these pharmaceutical products. And so you're supposed to just blindly trust them, I guess. But anyway, this article goes into a recent Angus Reid poll that was conducted that found that the vast majority of Canadians believe parents should be informed if their child wants to change their gender identity or pronouns at school, while views on parental consent are more divided. And that is just absurd because as soon as you relinquish that parental consent to the state, then the state's in charge. And this idea that schools are somehow equipped to deal with the complexities, we talked about it, Sydney and I talked about it pretty in depth during yesterday's live stream. So I don't want to repeat myself too much. And if you're wondering what we said there, you can head on over to yesterday's stream and check it out. But if we think that schools are somehow equipped to deal with the intense complexities of identity in children struggling with that core value of self, then we are seriously mistaken, because the family will play an integral role in assisting a child who is struggling with their identity. And I would argue that every child struggles with their identity, right? You have no idea who you are, what your place is in this world. their body image, who you're going to be, and your brain isn't even fully developed until sometime in your mid-20s. So, I mean, you have tons of time to figure this out. Why we have to shoehorn all of these children into these labels and think that that's going to last with them for the rest of their life is so not evidence-based and so unscientific that I can't even believe that it's gotten this far in the school system. Yeah, go ahead, Drea.
You're right that like the Toronto Star totally, spinned it a different way. But this is good news if you look at the poll and what you see, put the chart up and things like that. The questions were whether you think parents must be informed and give consent for this change, which overwhelmingly across Canada had the most support. And then parents must be informed if their child wants to identify differently. And that was, of course, the next biggest category. And then the other option was parents should neither be informed nor have a say. It's up to the child. I mean, that's insane. Like children, what do we leave up to children? Like if I left things up to my 7-year-old, oh my gosh, it'd be crazy. We don't let them drive. We don't let them drink. We don't let them. Imagine telling a child they could pick a tattoo today. Would you ever do that? No, because they're going to get like something totally silly on them that they're going to regret when they're older. And then, of course, there was a not sure, can't say section. Interestingly enough, you see that when it came to in support of parents, neither being informed or having a say, it was Atlantic Canada seemed to have the strongest opinion of that, and Saskatchewan had the lowest. So it's just kind of interesting to see how the different places sort of pulled on that, but also at the very basic level here. I mean, not informing parents. What if some of those parents were going to be okay with it? What if they, needed to just take a week or so and digest it and they would have been their biggest cheerleader? It is so sick to separate parents from children's identities. You're saying that parents don't have a right to know their child on a very basic level. And aside from all the sexual orientation stuff, even the kids that are not experiencing this rapid gender dysphoria, it's teaching kids that are learning about being allies and stuff, because let's remember, they're affected with this indoctrination too, that it's okay to have a separate life and keep secrets from your parents. On that alone, you would think everybody would be opposed to keeping parents in the dark on this issue.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and we see repeatedly that there's often mental health comorbidities that coincide with a struggle of self, a struggle of identity. And so that's suicide ideation, self-harm, abuse. And so keeping parents in the dark about these issues that may be plaguing their children really lends to further harm, because who's going to be keeping a watchful eye on these children that are struggling mentally and emotionally and psychologically? Who's going to keep an eye on them when they aren't in school, right? School's not the be all end all of these children's lives. They still need advocates outside of the system. And that's the crucial role of a family. And if these very rare instances is what the LGBTQ advocates seem to really prey on, these very rare instances where a family may not be in support, or the children may not have a strong family to fall back on, or a strong family unit to advocate on their behalf. And that is where you get children's aid. That's where the Children's Aid Society and children's aid advocates would come into play here, not the school. These children need robust and intensive medical assistance from whether that be a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a medical doctor or otherwise. But to just think that a school counselor is somehow equipped to deal with deep-rooted issues of identity and self is negligence, really, because that is not what they're trained to do. They don't have robust knowledge or experience dealing with and helping someone navigate a core identity struggle. And that's really dangerous territory that's charting a really dangerous path, in my opinion. And that is why it's so crucial for parents to be aware and informed of these happenings. And that's another, this poll and seeing the political ricochet that comes as a result is really highlighting how politics is downstream from culture, right? We see where the polls are going. We see where parents want to know, they want to be informed, they want to be involved. And now you have the politicians coming to that aid and that defense. And so these LGBTQ advocates are quite obviously a very small fringe minority, and they're off the mark, really, because in order to keep the kids safe in general, we need the parents. The parents need to be involved. And if in those very rare instances that is not a good fit and the parents are inept or struggling with their own mental health or whatever they have going on, that is why there are child and youth advocates to connect kids and bridge that gap so that they can be helped by a medical system. Again, whether that be a psychologist, psychiatrist, or a medical doctor. But thinking that schools are somehow equipped to deal with this and navigate this, that's dangerous territory.
Yeah, every EA, every educator pretty much across Canada is being trained that they need to do all things affirmative if they come across things. They're actually being trained to trans-identify children based on something they might say as simple as, you know, I'm a boy and I like to play with a doll or something like that. No history involved. It could be the boy surrounded by girls all day. And they're trained to really identify whether or not the educator actually does the training or follows through with what they're supposed to is a different story. But sometimes you get these activists, teachers around the kids, and they're really quick, and you can lose your whole child's identity. And that's actual real stories that we've been reporting on, not once, but multiple times. You can find that information at our special website called stopclassroomgrooming.com. That has been going strong all through the summer because we're still getting stories about what was happening in school before. And, you know, I'm sure it's going to unfortunately continue. So stopclassroomgrooming.com is a way that you can also take action there. There is a petition. Tamara, I know you championed this sort of campaign, but you can sign the petition, which I believe is going to go to all of the education ministers to hold them accountable. Now we know the parents don't like this stuff too. So go there, sign the petition. And if you appreciate this coverage, you can help support the cost of it too by chipping in a few bucks there as well.
Yeah, and literally also just subscribing so that you can stay up to date with our reports on that subject, because that website, that web page in particular houses all of our reports on that subject. And I'm preparing next week, the week after when school starts back up, it's only going to ramp up at that point, because you make an interesting point, Drea, that it happened, you know, we've been reporting all through the summer, protests are happening. And towards the end of the school year, the school board meetings and the protests that parents were showing up. I mean, that's really exercising your democratic voice, is showing up in those areas and voicing and expressing your opposition or your support or whatever you want to do. That is democracy in the works. So I think that that's going to ramp up again as September gets nearer. But we're about 6 minutes over 2:00, and we have one more headline item that I just want to share quickly with everyone. And it's an unhinged mask protesters. And this came out of Press for Truth. Dan Dix posted this clip on Twitter. So let's just have a quick little look here before we chat for a minute about it.
So stay here with us, and let's continue. And let's continue to, hey.
Easy guys, easy. You're fucking done. You're fucking done. Guys.
Oh my gosh.
Stay the fuck down. You're done. He attacked him.
I don't know what the hell's happening here. Leave, let him go, dude. Let him go. Get lost.
What the heck?
Why are you blocking my camera? Don't want people to see what happens at these things.
Don't want footage of a crime. Oh, welcome to the Lower Mainland. Oh my gosh. And how much does that make sense? To be worried about masks and then scuffling with a complete stranger, exchanging spit and everything as it flares. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Well, and for anybody who doesn't know what's happening here, and I didn't really either, but this happened just yesterday on Monday, August 28th, a group of protesters calling for a return, if you can believe it, to mandatory masks gathered out front of the BC, British Columbia Minister of Health's office to demand that mandatory mask mandates return to the province. And so just moments into the demonstration, that's what we see here. A man holding signs contrary to their beliefs was attacked by two of the masked protesters who tried to destroy his signs and silence his free speech. Dan Dix from Press for Truth was there to document the event. and counter the lies that the mainstream media will undoubtedly not publish, I assume is to counter the lies, right? Yeah, because they'll spin it some way. The truth is these people are insane, and the footage clearly speaks for itself. Yeah, these are the people who claim to be following the science, and they're okay with just unleashing violence in the streets if you don't agree with their supposed science. I think most of them are wearing cloth masks, which, I mean, we've known from like extremely early on, even prior to 2020, but they tried a little bit to make it seem like cloth masks could maybe work. But we know that cloth masks are entirely ineffective, and actually are bacteria super spreader mechanisms, right? You breathe out, you're breathing out carbon dioxide, bacteria, pathogens in your breath. And then it becomes moist and it really like festers that kind of pathogenic material. And then you just breathe it back in. So cloth masks are not only ineffective, but they actually increase your chances of coming down with a serious bacterial lung infection. And so that's what these people are wearing. Look at it's all, and there's a couple paper masks. Okay. So there's a couple, what are those, KN95s? Maybe that's a
the
black
K,
KN95s.
not even the real N95s. Well, and also the science was conclusive very early on. It was pretty conclusive that there's no point in wearing masks outside as well, which they are also doing. But I mean, at this point, if you're protesting to wear masks, clearly, maybe perhaps you think you look better in them. That's a real thing. There's a lot of people who think they look better in masks, or it's become sort of like this safety thing that you feel like instant panic, heart palpitations as soon as you take it off. That's my theory anyways. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. If you want to wear a mask, go right ahead. I think Darwin, survival of the fittest. You want to wear a mask, go right ahead. All the power to you. But likewise, if I don't want to wear a mask, yeah, please don't mask your kids. That's just awful. Hypoxia is not good for brain or body development. Hypoxia is a shortage of oxygen. And so we want to make sure that pregnant women and children have robust access to oxygen at all times. But hey, at the end of the day, if you respect my freedom of choice, then I'll respect yours, as long as you're making an informed choice, right? If you're making an informed,
people who disagree with you.
100%. I think that's like a really low bar to go off of, right?
I'll take it these days.
Anyway, we're about 10 minutes past the hour. I don't think there's any more super chats, so we'll wrap that up. I hope that everybody at home enjoyed our live stream. Thanks so much, Drea, for being here with me to chat about the news items of the day. Always a good time to check in and catch up with you. Thanks everybody behind the scenes who makes the live stream possible, whether it be the social media clips or just getting our verbiage out there, making sure our grammar is correct, compiling everything for us in a clear, concise way that we can bring it to you, our viewers, for everybody at home watching us. Of course, we couldn't do it without you. And to Olivia and Efron, who are always so speedy behind the scenes, getting up the links and the references that we throw to, finding those videos, like literally quick, real time. You guys are the real unsung heroes. So as David Menzies would always say, join us here, same time and place tomorrow, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern, for a new set of rebels who will do the exact same dissection of the news of the day. Stay safe and stay sane.
So the Bank of Canada has said increased immigration has helped keep house prices and rents elevated. The housing minister has floated the idea of a cap on international student visas to alleviate that pressure. Would you support that?
Well, first of all, I think Sean Fraser owes Canadians an apology. He was the immigration minister that caused total chaos and inhumanity in our international student program. He was the one that forced those students into desperation, allowed them to be defrauded by fake programs and phony admission letters. He was the one, by his own admission, that signed off on visas for students to come here when there were 5 students for every unit of housing at colleges. Those are by his own admission. Over the last few weeks, we've seen an incredible phenomenon where the current immigration minister has been viciously attacking the record of his immediate Liberal predecessor, Sean Fraser. Sean Fraser also put our refugees under bridges, on streets, and in desperate circumstances. He is the worst immigration minister in my lifetime. And what is his punishment? He's been promoted to housing minister. How are we ever going to fix housing with such an incompetent minister as Sean Fraser? But that's 8 years of Justin Trudeau. When I'm Prime Minister, we will fix what Trudeau broke in the international student program to ensure that when students arrive, they have homes, jobs, health care, and we will make sure that the programs for which they register are real, valid educational programs with true admission letters. We will audit those applications to make sure that large-scale frauds are not perpetrated against the students. The numbers of students will be determined by the availability of spaces at universities and homes for those students. That is a common sense approach that always flourished and made our international student program the best in the world before Trudeau arrived. We're going to get back to that common sense approach when I'm Prime Minister.
How in the world could such a small group of people with limited resources change world history? But in fact, that's happening, and it's the power of the truth. The truth is like kryptonite.
Healthcare isn't in some sense working very well. Foster Colson is thinking about this. He's got a new company, an online healthcare platform called the Wellness Company.
Telehealth company called the Wellness Company.
The Wellness Company.
The most popular product is the detoxification supplement that features nattokinase. Nattokinase is the only enzyme that we're aware of right now that dissolves the spike protein. Spike protein is loaded in the body with the COVID-19 infection and